Okay.
Today we have Dr. Wooten on the phone. This is one of my good friends I've known for a lot of years. Man, I'm so happy to have you on Suede Soul Search today, Doc. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, Harold. Good to hear your voice.
You too, man. And most people have no idea who you are, but I do. Okay, and I want to make sure the world knows who you are, just in reference to what you represent and what you do. So I'm gonna get right down to it and ask you a couple questions. Okay, is that okay
Okay.
with you?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, Doc. What I want to know is, I know you had an impressive journey, man. From young childhood declaring to be a pediatrician to becoming a renowned physician. So what motivated you, like at an early age, to pursue this path? What
Well, it's
led you
really
down this road?
interesting. It's really interesting. And I guess the question I get all the time because people have heard my story that I knew about by age 8 that I wanted to be a pediatrician. And what really got me involved in wanting to be a doctor for children in particular was that my father used to work as a janitor actually in St. Joseph's Hospital here in Phoenix. And I used to sometimes go pick him up with my mother. I'd see these guys with these white coats on and nice polished shoes, with penny loafers, looking good in their little clothes, and of course, all of them were white. There were there were no African American doctors at that point that I
Right.
saw, and I used to ask my dad, "Daddy, what do they do? What do they do?" And he said, my dad called every doctor interns. He said, "They're interns. They take care of people. They're interns." And I said, "Well, you know what? Whatever it is they do, that's what I want to do." And I said that simply because they were dressed nicely.
Wow.
And that's really what got me involved in wanting to be a doctor. As I explored it more and more,
Give us
I
a
said, I
time
just,
frame. Give us a time frame for people listening. My
I,
millennials,
I was
my Generation
7.
X.
I
Okay, so
was
what?
7
Okay.
in the mid 60s. I actually about 67, 68. I was 7 years old. And then by the time I was 8, I knew I wanted to be a pediatrician. I had researched being a doctor enough to know that I wanted to be a pediatrician. I want to take care of kids
So
because I was a kid.
all these
Hmm.
interns that you were looking at, and your
Right.
dad was letting you know, and they were all not any of color during that time
None.
frame.
None.
Okay, so at what point in your life did that change?
Well, let me tell you how that, it's really interesting. When I ran through school, I was 16 when I finished high school, and I was very blessed. I got accepted to over 150 colleges that had full rides to every one of them. And so I had my pick of the litter, if you will, or choice of where to go to school. I was 19 years old when I finished college at Northwestern University in Chicago. I
Mm.
finished in 3 years. I was a chemical engineer and biomedical engineer major. And when I applied to medical school,
Wait. Slow down. Okay, I know this. I know we got a shorter period of time to get this through, but chemical and biomedical engineering. What does that
yeah.
do? What is that phase? What
Well,
were you
just
doing?
an engineer, chemical engineers, well, let me just tell you, I studied that knowing that I'd have a great job to fall back on if I didn't get into medical school. Chemical engineers are people who design and implement but you like petroleum, Standard Oil, Exxon,
Okay.
figuring out the chemical basis for everything, how you can mix chemicals and come up with a good product. It's a whole bunch of the lines of
Okay.
work in
No, that makes
engineering.
sense though. Okay,
But
I'm
that's a
sorry. I
chemical.
just wanted to
And
kind of
and,
put that in there so
and
everybody knew.
biomedical is just making things like prostheses and so forth and so on in medicine, right?
Okay. Got it.
So I was like I said, I was 19 when I finished college, and I was applying to medical schools at 19 years of age, extremely young. And I decided I got into 10 medical schools that I applied to. Every medical school that I applied to, I got into. And I kind of shocked the world because I was enrolled to start at Washington University in St. Louis. And I changed my mind in the 11th hour and decided to go back to Arizona, the University of Arizona College of Medicine. And why did I do that? When
Yeah.
I left Phoenix, Maricopa County, fourth largest city in the country, there were only 4 African Americans in the entire county practicing
Wow.
medicine. Only 4 doctors. And when I went to the University of Arizona College of Medicine, I was the first African American in the state of Arizona studying medicine in 8 years. I was the third ever since the mid 60s, and I was the youngest student ever. I was
Wow.
19. So when I finished medical school, I was the youngest doctor in the state's history. Now you add that all up, and now you realize why I decided to come back to my home state, because I wanted to make a difference. So
Absolutely.
I made a promise to myself that it would not stay that way. Those numbers would not stay low like that. And I worked very hard over the next 20 years or so to recruit African Americans into medicine. And
Wow.
here I'll say this now. In Phoenix, Maricopa County right now, the estimates we're over the 350 black doctors.
Wow. Congratulations,
So
man. That
we
sounds
went from
amazing.
40 years ago to 350. And so that's what my emphasis has been. I'm all about doing
What an
things
impact.
for the community.
Well, let me go back because I know it's gonna be some young people listening to this and so forth too. So I mean, you followed that path from 8 all the way to where you are today. Okay, and but how did you stay out of trouble? How did you maintain the ability to, get straight A's or how being able to be accepted at such a young age into all these colleges? Could you give that mindset?
Well, I have, my parents. My parents, they just celebrated, they're going on their 71st year of marriage. My
Wow,
parents instilled
congrats.
in me and my brothers and sisters the value of education. And more importantly, my grandfather, who was a minister in Phoenix for almost 50 years, instilled into me the necessity of giving back. It's not an option in my family. It was not an option. It was a necessity. I call it that, a necessity. You have to get in a position to give back to your community. And so that's what I was all about my whole life. I knew I wanted to get in a position to make an impact on my community as great as I could. So that's why, I'm sitting in my office right now, believe it or not, which is 1 block away from where I initially grew up in what was then called the Matthew Henson Housing Projects. It's the largest housing project in Arizona. That's why I was born initially. And my office that I sit in today is 1 block away from the apartment that I grew up in the projects.
Wow, what a
So,
story.
I am about doing something positive for my community, and that's what led me to decide to run for Congress.
Well, I want to ask a question real quick because I know you received the Calvin C. Good and the Martin Luther King Lifetime Achievement Award. And so, based on just Martin Luther King's principles, did that have any influence on your vision on political office?
Absolutely, that was my influence. To be honest with you, I've been very blessed. I've won a lot of awards, Doctor of the Year, Maricopa County, so forth. So I mean, I won a lot of awards.
Yes, sir.
But the award that I've won that means the most to me really is the Martin Luther King Jr. Calvin C. Good Lifetime Achievement Award, because Martin Luther King Jr. was my idol and hero. Him, my grandfather, and my father. Those were the three people that influenced my life more than anybody. And the principles that he dished out to not just to the Americans but the world are those principles that I live by. And I always say, you're not living large if you're not giving large. And I'm
I love
about
that.
giving. You remember
I know
me
that.
from
No,
you
I know
remember me
that.
from
I
my
know that.
days in the music industry.
Oh,
You remember what I
absolutely.
do. That's what I
Yes.
do. Um, I believe in helping people achieve what they want to achieve in life. If I can be a catalyst for them to do so, do well, I'll do so. But Martin Luther King Jr., everything about Martin Luther King Jr. meant something to me. And I even went and shoot, my wife and I made sure we went to march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge.
Wow.
That's a part of I had to do that just so I could feel that history in me. So I walked back and forth twice across that bridge. And I wasn't going to do the march to Birmingham. I wasn't going to do that. It was too long. Too
I
long.
got what?
I
Well,
drove it
speaking
though.
of,
I drove it. I didn't walk it. I
oh, I
drove it.
got you. Okay, so you kind of
And
cheated a little
and
bit.
and
I
and,
got you.
and we were invited to Dr. King's church. I stood at the pulpit that he preached from. Got some
Wow.
great pictures. They did a very significant thing for me and kind of treated me like a VIP and took me around.
Wow. Well,
I got
you
to go
are.
into his office, which nobody was really allowed to go into, and they let me go into. It was just special for me. But that the guiding principles of Martin Luther King Jr. is what is given me my fuel all these years, and so I just decided to run because I personally, Harold, just have been tired of looking at the diverse, the not the diversity, of course, but the divisiveness, in Congress, in America. It's driving me crazy. People
So
don't
how
want to.
so how do you tell me how your views are and what you see the problem is, instead of just a broad spectrum. Where do you see that there really can be some help with what you're bringing to the table in the
Well,
spectrum of political
that
aspects?
that's a great question. It's really simple. I have been known to bring people together to work together for a common cause. I've done a lot of that here in Phoenix. It's just somebody with some common sense to get people to see the true justification of their actions and how we need to impact people who need the help the most. See, the biggest problem is that people just don't want to work together. It's like taboo. It's like, oh, I'm not going to work with him because he's a Republican. I'm not going to work with him because he's a Democrat. Instead of just saying, we need to pull our resources, come to some common ground, and fix things. And if we did that, we would be able to fix a lot of our ills so quickly in this country. But no one's willing to reach across the aisle, as they say, and truly reach across the aisle and say, hey, let's not be stupid here. We can fix this. And so there are things that we can fix in this country so fast if we just really had a significant word in our vocabulary, and that word is called compassion. See, we've lost that. People in this country don't have compassion for each other anymore. None. Being a pediatrician, I see the best of times and the worst of times. People go, well, Dr. Wooten, you've been a pediatrician almost 4 decades, and you it's the greatest job. You take care of kids. But Harold, it can sometimes be the worst job. Because when a kid dies, it's not such a great job. So when I have to look at the parents' eyes and tell them the kid's not going to make it, it's not such a great job. I've been able to pull people together for years to make things happen. I'll give you an example. There were two warring factions in this city in Phoenix for years that were not even here of trying to pull themselves together and build a Phoenix Children's Hospital. It took a little young African American doctor to pull two groups together to actually build the hospital that's now known as Phoenix Children's Hospital. And as a result of that, I was on the foundation, the first 20 years, the foundation board of the hospital. And there's, believe it or not, there's a plaque dedicated to this. It was back then, this young African American doctor. There's a plaque dedicated to him, that would be me, on the top of that building that's in downtown Phoenix. And how did it happen? I got two warring sides to put their armor down and talk and come up with some solutions, and we did it. I think I can do the same thing in Congress. I really believe that.
And I personally, who have seen you walk through these doors and move like you move for over 20 years, and I don't live in Arizona, but I mean, if I was there, it wouldn't be, I don't vote with a friendship element in mind. I vote with who I think can get the job done. And you would be one of the first people that I would be putting my signature behind, because I believe, watching you over the years and seeing exactly be a man of your word, the people that you've helped, the way that you helped them without ever wanting any retribution in return, is always something that I've looked at, and I was excited about being able to interview you for that purpose. So the word I want to know, can you give everybody the mindset on what they need to do in the voting layers to get to that are listening in the area, that can vote in your district and so forth, what you're running for, and where to donate at, because I know that campaign is looking at,
Oh,
and that it's going to be looking for funding, and we're getting close to the layer. So give
well,
us that information, please.
let me just give you that right now. The easiest way to help me is to first and foremost just go to my website, WootenForArizona.com. It's all together, WootenForArizona.com. And there you can see what my platform is, what I'm standing for. I'm really about housing and food insecurities. I'm worried about. I'm really about economic development. You know that, Harold, about me. I really believe we have to empower people to be able to do better and give them the opportunity to do so with technology, etc. And of course, education. I am about education and giving everybody equal opportunities that they still don't have, especially in the inner cities, and give them adequate funding that they need. And that's always been. And lastly, of course, being a doctor, healthcare. I'm about universal single payer healthcare. I really have a hard time watching people go bankrupt because they get a chronic medical condition and they can't afford their care. And we're still dealing with that. Even though we have the Affordable Care Act, which has done wonders, we've got a long way to go.
People don't
So,
understand what you just said right now, and I mean it's
right.
very prevalent what you just said. So again, with universal single payer care, give the point on why that's important to you and why the difference, especially being a doctor, someone who's in the medical system, who sees what's going on, who knows that patients need these things that are causing them to have problems. So give up why that's important, if you will.
Well, I deal with it every day. Okay, people think that, oh, because they have the Affordable Care Act, everything's going to be covered, so they have no issues. And really, what it is, it's fool's gold. You may have a health plan that's covering your basic healthcare needs, but you would be surprised how many health plans still don't cover very necessary services like physical and occupational therapy if you're in an accident, like senior care, senior living care, like uh, nursing homes, assisted care facilities, etc. You'd be surprised how much of that is not covered on the insurance. I can go on and on. But the big one, medications. Harold, you would be shocked how many people I prescribe a medication that I've used for 7 months, 8 months, 12 months in a kid. All of a sudden, the health plan decides not covered it anymore.
Wow, they can't
So I'm
afford it.
scrambling around trying to find something compatible and comparable. It's
Right.
a nightmare. People just don't understand. Now, why is that important to me? Out of 35 industrialized nations in this world, America is the only one that does not have single payer universal health care.
Wow.
Everybody else does. Britain, Canada, France. And I guess they all are doing it wrong, and we're the only ones doing it right, right?
Of
Is
course.
that what
Of
we're going to
course.
say?
Of course. That's what we're
No,
gonna
but
say.
what it really is, and I don't mind saying it, I've said it so far, every speech I've given, it's greed, Harold. It's
I
greed.
absolutely agree.
If you don't, we don't take the privatization out of healthcare, where you have these Aetnas, Uniteds of the world that have boards that get huge lump sums of money as bonuses based on the amount of money they save the company. Except if you don't take that out, we're always going to have issues with healthcare. When you can pay a CEO of a certain private health plan a $58 million bonus because the company did so well a couple of years ago. That's an atrocity.
Absolutely overstand.
And
So
I
what
just can't deal with that.
as someone that's in this particular position, because again, a lot of people who turn to holistic care because of the fact that not one being able to afford medical care on the side that they can. And so what do you say to those people who are trying to navigate both of those worlds?
Well, I say for people like that, find individuals like me who are running for office because I'm going to look out for them. It's my greatest tragedy I see in this country, besides the racism that still exists in this country, is the fact that you have people who suffer to stay healthy. Everybody, everybody should have health care as a right, not a privilege. And I, believe it or not, have had arguments with even doctors who say healthcare is not a right, it's a privilege. If you can't afford it, you just shouldn't be able to get it. Doctors. I've had
So
doctors say that.
say this to me.
Doctors.
How does a veteran, you know, maneuver in the system of
Oh,
healthcare when there's so many layers to that?
well, I would tell you, there has been some good movement in that because 10 years ago, I couldn't say what I'm about to say. The Veterans Administration have done yeoman's work trying to improve in the delivery of quality care to the veterans. And they've done a great job considering where they were just a few short years ago. It was just atrocious how long a veteran had to wait to be seen for certain kinds of care in the veterans system. Months, 10 months, 12 months. They've gotten better. They have a long way to go. But see, that's a sticking point for me. I'm a veterans champion. If you're a veteran of the United States of America, there is no reason in the world that you're sitting up there waiting for care. You're sitting on the streets. Look at the proportion of veterans that are homeless.
That was where I was
Un,
going with that. Exactly.
unacceptable. Let me just give you an example of how quickly we could fix the homeless problem in America. If what's that word I used earlier? If we just showed the compassion to do so. Let me give you an example. I toured the world recently as I decided to run for office, and I've gone to different countries to see how they deliver their health care, how they deal with the homeless situation. And I'm going to give an example of one country that I went to. About 40 years ago, this country, which has about 1/200th of the gross natural product that America does, so they weren't by any chance, they weren't by any state of the imagination rich, but they came up with a concept of what? Taking care of their people. This country was full of slums and tents, etc. I'm talking about the country called Singapore. In the 60s, it was just a slum country for the most part. And one gentleman came up with the concept of housing the homeless. And how to do it was to turn some of these slums and tent cities into high-rise apartments that the government owned. And so he started embarking as an architect. And it's so funny I say that because I just read something recently where he was almost in tears because the government's trying to switch and turn it around and become like America. So let me tell you what I mean by that. They spent the next 20, 30 years building high-rise apartments for the needy, for the disadvantaged. And they would let the families buy or rent the apartments for 20 to 30-year leases. And at the end of the leases, the families then owned them. Well, what did that do? That allowed them to pass it down from generation to generation and keep their families sheltered. So when I went to Singapore just a few months ago, Harold, I couldn't find a homeless person. I spent 5 days trying to find a homeless person, literally. Wow. I couldn't find one. And I came back and taught at that and talked to my groups, et cetera, et cetera. Just a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, I saw a special report on this gentleman I'm talking about, this architect, thinking how he was almost in tears because the country has now decided, hey, maybe we can start prioritizing some of these high-rises for sale and sell them as homes and instead of renting them out to the disadvantaged and stuff and just sell them. And the average price
brings me
yes.
to my next conversation with you.
The average price, they've started $1 million each.
Okay. I just saw a special and it was based in Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
And it talked about how there's one company that is taking over all of these properties they own just in Arizona.
I know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about.
Of the rents that it's going on, and they're shaping the rent control, which is pricing everybody out of the market.
Exactly.
Arizona went up 400% since 2016.
Exactly.
Saw that.
Exactly.
So how do you see of addressing something so serious as being done from a company who deals with it as an algorithm?
They're doing that, turning these properties, and a lot of them are Airbnbs, rentals, allowing people to have the flexibility to purchase moderate range to lower priced homes. They're driving up the market considerably and pretty soon. That's why right now we estimate we're at about a 300,000 unit shortage for housing in Phoenix. 300,000 unit shortage. Because out of that. Oh, yeah. I have a real big plan. First of all, is to knock out these foreign investors that are using these properties just to invest and turn them into things like Airbnbs. We've got to just halt it, stop it, number one. And number two, repurpose some of the buildings that are dilapidated, and there are a lot of them, Harold. Repurpose them and turn them into housing units for the disadvantaged. It is really simple to do because everybody loves one thing, money. And if you're a landlord, you own property that's just sitting there dilapidated and you're still having to pay taxes on it and you don't have the money to refurbish it and turn it into anything, wouldn't you like to get a kickback tax break and not have to worry about that and let the government turn them into low-income housing?
So how do you feel about tiny homes?
I love tiny homes. I'm an engineer, so I like anything that requires thought processes and building and being efficient. So I like tiny homes.
Do you see that as being a way of helping as a point of what we're talking about right now?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We already have a place here in Phoenix, about 2 miles from where I sit now, that they've already started a little community of them.
Oh
Absolutely.
wow. Okay.
Absolutely. I like it, my friend. That's what I'm
Okay.
talking about.
So these are things, man. I'm just so excited about what you're doing, and I know your time is limited today, and I definitely was glad I was able to get you in on, being able to express what you're doing and how it affects. I still want one question that I'm kind of curious about because I know the lovely Tamika Wooten, your wife, is help you in a lot of areas, and she's highly accomplished. So how is the support? How do you guys support each other's professional journey?
Well, I know, I'm sure you know that she's actually running for Maricopa County Attorney.
Yes,
And
sir. I heard
and
that
that
also.
that is like the political office in the state of Arizona that's the most high profile, even more higher than the congressman, because all the issues from a judicial system that's going on, that's plaguing this country as far as women's rights, reproductive rights, racial profiling, that you now seeing that the Arizona State Legislature is authorized now the border patrol, the police departments to racially profile. If you're brown and they think you may possibly be illegal, they can just stop you and search you and question you just because you look a certain way. That just passed this past week.
Is that under
So,
Republican rule or Democrat?
well, the state legislature is Republican dominated in the state of Arizona. So, yeah, they came up with this law and they passed it. So it's a nightmare in this state right now, and the Maricopa County Attorney, even so more so than the Attorney General of the state, but the Maricopa County Attorney is like the person that creates the policy for prosecutorial issues and so forth. And my wife is the Democratic nominee for it, and she's going straight to the general election in November. So we keep our fingers and toes crossed because there's never been a county attorney in the history of the Maricopa County in Arizona who's had more experience than my wife. My wife used to be a chief prosecutor for the city of Glendale here in Arizona. Then she went to the other side and became a criminal defense attorney for almost 15 more years. And then the last 10 years, she's been a judge. So 34 years as an attorney, and she's done all three areas of the judicial system. And there's never been a county attorney with that pedigree. So
Wow.
my wife, who I'm very proud of, who is a champion for people of all colors, but especially people of color. And I just think that her race is just as important or even more so than mine.
I'm so proud of her too. I got one more comment to see if you got on it. If I remember correctly, Hadia Broadbent was one of your patients.
Yes,
Okay, and she recently passed,
yes.
and that was So I mean, you want to say anything about that? Because I mean that was amazing. Just the fact that you had that interaction with her.
Yeah, I unfortunately I've lost a lot of former patients in the last 3, 4 months even. And every time I lose a patient, no matter what their age, because I have 3 generations that I've taken care of now. One of my nurses years ago said, Doctor, when I see it in your eyes, every time one of your patients pass away, a part of you dies. So part of your heart dies, doesn't it? And I say, yeah, it does. And it takes a long time for me to recover from them. I've had some tragedies this last few months of kids I've taken care of now, young adults, and just tragedy. So, I don't like to talk about it much because I get very emotional. Still, after 40 years, I get very emotional about it. But I that's why I tell people you cherish every moment you have with people. Don't spend time arguing over petty stuff that means nothing. Because in the end, it's how you leave this earth. What you leave is your legacy that matters. And you know, people like her, they left a legacy. So I'm happy.
And I want to say that we're proud to see your legacy still be going as strong as it is, and glad to see you getting your flowers when you are here to accept them and be in the places. Really appreciate it. So I thank you for being on our show, and I definitely know that you and I will keep in touch here in the very near future with all the things we both have going on. And
Absolutely.
this this has been Suede Soul H Dub, aka Harold Whaley, along with Dr. Wooten on the Suede Soul Search. Doc, we want to thank you. And is there anything else you want to give out? Give out your email address and ways that they could connect. Maybe whatever information that you'd like for them to have on that.
On that WootenForArizona.com, you can communicate with our team. You can donate money to our campaign if you'd like. You can see videos, excuse me, about me and what I've done. Everything's going to be on there for you. I appreciate anybody's support. Excuse me. See, you choked me up, Harold. You see how you done this? You choked me up, and I appreciate everybody's support. It's been a battle, but I was made to be a soldier for the battle, so I don't mind that. So go to WootenForArizona.com, and I appreciate every bit of support I get.
That's WootenForArizona.com, everybody. And if you need more information, I'm going to put that up on the SuedeSoul.com website. This is H Dub and Dr. Wooten on Suede Soul Search.